Got to do a look at something with the telescope. Let's try to find some sunspots. So I've got this thing pointed at the sun here, and of course you can't look at it with your own eye. You have to look at it on a piece of paper. But to tell the truth, I don't see anything except some cloudy tree branches. But anyway, there's, at least you can tell I'm looking at the sun. Can you get that in the video? I see I'm looking at the sun through a bunch of tree branches, but I don't see any obvious sunspots. As usual, nothing ever works when you want it to. Alright, that's good enough. I promised to make a short little video about an old telescope that I have, that I've had since I was a kid 50 years ago. It's a 4-inch reflector with a few little tweaks that I've added to it over the years. And my point for showing this to you is, you don't need anything fancy to do some fun astronomy. This thing, it's been beat up, broken in half a few times, and it still stays in my car, and I can pull it out and take a look at anything interesting that happens to be there. So, you've seen the little telescope. Here's a couple of the eyepieces that came with it over 50 years ago. This is the one I use most, 18mm old eyepiece. Here's the one I use the least, a 7mm eyepiece. And here's one that I bought some years ago, because after you use a telescope for a while, the thing you learn is that you want to use low magnification to see stuff. Not high magnification, because that just makes them all big and fuzzy. You want to see things crisp. And to make them crisp, you got to make them smaller. And that also makes them brighter. So, it's fun. These are actually sort of lousy eyepieces, in the sense that their field of view is really narrow and it's not that great, but hey, you go with what you have. In fact, they're an odd size. This one that I bought isn't the same size as the other, and I had to spend a little time in the machine shop actually machining a little adapter. So you get to be inventive, and I just keep them in old film canisters, and then I'm ready to roll anytime I need to get going. I suppose I should tell you a few stories about this telescope. My dad got it for me when I was probably 10, which is over half a century ago, unfortunately. And I get it out occasionally to look at the planets. And that's all I did when I was a little kid, is look at the planets and the moon with it. And it took years, actually, for me to wake up to the fact that there's a lot of stuff out there that you can see in a telescope even this small. I remember the first time I looked at the Orion Nebula, and I was just astonished that it's as big as the moon, practically. And there's a whole bunch of other things you can look at up there. Some of my favorites are like the Dumbbell Nebula or the Globular Cluster M22, but there's plenty of other things to see. And it's just fun to poke around. And stars with color contrast like Albireo at the end of Cygnus. You'll love the color contrast of those two stars. And there's so many other things, too many to mention. But the fun is just to be able to see a thing like that live. Looking at a picture of it in a book or online is just not the same as going out and actually looking at it in the sky. And my main point about this is you don't need something fancy or expensive. If you buy a really expensive telescope that has all kinds of electronics and bolts and nuts that you have to put together, it's going to stay in your attic instead of getting outside. I like this one because I just have to throw it together, and I keep it in my car all the time, so when something comes up, I just whip it together and take a look. And that's what you want to do, is just go out and have fun. Like right now is the perfect time to see Mars and Jupiter and Saturn. And I suppose if you want to look at the moon, although to me the moon is your big car headlight in the sky. Once it's out, you can't really see anything else. But, oh well, that's the way it goes. So, enjoy. And we'll see you around, I hope.